Inspired thinker. I have been on the road for the last couple of weeks and have had some incredible opportunities to share Dare to Lead or Dare to Lead Whistler Retreat. Just exceeded expectations in terms of what it would feel like to be back together in person. I had an incredible group of leaders and two intact teams, two leadership teams that joined us and went through Dare to Lead, within the cohort, but also as a team. So it planted a seed for me. If you have a leadership team or your team, doesn't have to be a leadership team, looking for an experience of learning, of connection, of skill building together, we are currently looking at dates for an April in-person Dare to Lead, probably on Vancouver Island somewhere. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. But that's not what I wanted to talk about this morning. I'm trying to think about how to distill this experience of empathy that I had that really highlighted for me the importance of empathy and the impact it has when we get it wrong, when we miss the mark. And empathy is a skill set, and it's a complex skill set, more complicated than we realize. And empathy is certainly showing up in the leadership zeitgeist as an important skill set. So I think about the Brene Brown quote, which we'll put here in the newsletter. The quote that when we're brave enough to create the space for fears and feelings, we can minimize unproductive and ineffective behavior. So that's always been one of my favorite quotes. And I do think that leaders need to create that space for fears and feelings. And we get empathy wrong a lot, or we shy away from fears and feelings because we think we have to fix it or make it better or say the perfect thing in order to sit in that space of someone having an emotional experience. So here's my quick story of me experiencing empathy and then me experiencing an empathy fail and how that started to create a response from me. So I'm on the road last week, my last little leg of this trip. I was in Regina, Calgary, final leg of the trip. I'm driving to Harrison Hot Springs in a rental car. So I pick up the rental car at the Vancouver airport. I'm on a busy stretch of the highway. Suddenly the car decelerates. This big plume of smoke comes out the exhaust at the back, and the car just kind of starts to sputter and then eventually picks up speed. I'm scared because it's back-to-back traffic and everybody's going 100, but suddenly I'm dropping down to like 60. So I pull over, get into an exit lane, get into actually there was a Chevron station, pull over there, and called the roadside assistance line for a budget rental car. And Roxy, because I asked her name eventually, picked up the call. And Roxy was so skillful at calming me down, acknowledging my fears and feelings. She asked me, "How are you feeling? Are you safe? That must have been scary. We're going to figure this out. I'm going to help you find a solution here." So she acknowledged my fears and feelings. She checked in to see how I was doing. She reassured me that she was there for me and we would figure something out together. And, I noticed in that moment, I was fearful. I was in my amygdala. I kind of wanted to, blame somebody, have that outburst, have that moment of discharge that Brene talks about. But Roxy was so good at acknowledging my fears and feelings that I wasn't going to blast on her and take out my frustration on her. She actually helped me settle down my brain, and find a calm sort of problem-solving mindset. So fast forward, there was a bunch of different options. In the end, I chose the option of driving very slowly to a new budget location to switch out the car. And I get to the desk at that new budget location. They knew I was coming. They knew they had somebody with a failed car coming to the desk. And I walk up to the desk and I put down the keys and I said, I'm the person that needs a new car. And they looked at me. One of them looked at me. The other one just kept typing on their computer, but I was right there. And the one that looked at me said, "Did you fill the car up with gas before you brought it back?" And boom, that amygdala reaction, I was so unhappy with that response. I've white knuckled it to that airport. So no acknowledgement of the experience that I've just had. Very curt, fill out this paperwork. Here's the keys to the new car. Go find it in the lot. Good luck. And so my amygdala just reared up. And because they didn't acknowledge how I was feeling, I wanted to be rude. I kind of felt like being a jerk. I felt like blasting them with all my fears and feelings. And in the moment, I was like, this is fascinating. Like the impact on me based on how people responded to the situation that I was in. So the budget counter people, total empathy fail, never mind a customer service fail. And Roxy on the phone, who I actually didn't see, was so skillful in acknowledging fears and feelings. So it was such a great, example. It was not a great experience for me, but it was a great example in the power of empathy. And when we're willing to acknowledge fears and feelings. So I think about, employee conversations, team member conversations, when people are feeling negative emotions, frustration, disappointment, impatience, wanting to blame, whatever that emotion is, if we're willing to kind of meet them there and just give them a space to acknowledge it, ask them what they need, think about how we might be able to diffuse these negative emotions that come up, because emotions are part of the equation when we're working with people. So that's my quick share. We're going to focus on empathy this week. We've got a great article for you at the bottom of the newsletter. We're going to drop the fears and feelings quote in here. I want you to think about that in the next opportunity. How can you acknowledge fears and feelings in a conversation that you're having? You don't have to fix it. You're creating that space to acknowledge, get curious with them, and then ask them what they need. Where do they want to go next? You do not have to give the advice or problem solve that for them. Don't make assumptions about what they need either. So a huge skill, empathy. We practice it and talk about it, teach it in Dare to Lead. I've also integrated it into Courageous Coaching for Leaders because it's such an essential skill. So stay brave, create the space for those fears and feelings. We are on the cusp of December. I can't believe it. Looking forward to finishing out 2022 with you all. Take care.